Welcome to Conversations from St. Norbert College, a program that encourages good discussion in our community on today's local and global issues. Now, your host for Conversations from St. Norbert College, author, professor, and nationally known sports economist, Dr. Kevin Quinn.
Welcome to Conversations from St. Norbert College. I'm Kevin Quinn. Our special guest is Marti Wronski, a St. Norbert College graduate and vice president and general counsel for the Milwaukee Brewers. We will discuss Ronsky's role with the Brewers and how it impacts the team on the field. We'll also chat about her time spent here in Pere. A native of Neenah, Wisconsin, Ronsky is beginning her 8th season with the Brewers and her 6th as vice president and general counsel. In her role, she oversees all legal and contract work, including players' and coaches' contracts, sponsorship contracts, legal designs for trademark and fan entertainment, and compliance matters. Before joining the Milwaukee Brewers, Ronsky worked as litigation associate from 1997 to 2001 and joined Marquette University Law School for the 2002-2003 academic year as an assistant professor. A native of Neenah, Wisconsin, Ronsky graduated summa cum laude from St. Norbert College in 1994 and then graduated from the University of Wisconsin Law School with high honors in 1997. Marti, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, let's start off by telling folks, what does a general counsel for a Major League Baseball team do all day?
What do we do all day? I think that the answer is there's no set schedule in any day. The word general is very real in the world of general counsels for Major League Baseball clubs. We do everything quite literally from just the day-to-day fan trips, or how do you set rules for a particular contest you might be running in the ballpark, through to negotiating sponsorship agreements for all the signage you might see in the ballpark, other contracts and agreements with service providers, through to the player, what is most visible to everyone, which is the player contracts and the contracts with the coaches. So we literally, there is no set rhythm to the day. There is no set schedule to the week. I might be meeting with the mayor's office one day. In our instance, we're state property, so I meet with folks from the state, folks from the city, right down to looking at whether our little sausage costume designs on our trademarks are long enough or short enough, or the stripes look just right later that same afternoon. So there's really no consistency.
So I'm sure a lot of people would like to know, how does somebody wind up working for a Major League Baseball team? I get students asking me that kind of question all the time, and it seems like the dream job.
I will tell you, where I sit, it is the dream job, and I'm very, very grateful to have it. How I ended up here, I have students who are very disappointed when I give this answer sometimes. I know that for a lot of students, it is a very deliberate process. From the minute that they, hit high school or graduate from high school, they know this is exactly what they want to do. In my instance, or in my situation, I came out of law school and I went to Foley as a litigation associate. And we did some work for Major League Baseball at Foley and Lardner, and so I had touched in some of the Major League Baseball work. But I left Foley when we had our first son and intended to stay and remain in academia for a very, very long time. The reality is I had worked really hard at Foley, I was working hard at the law school, and the club needed someone, and they needed someone on a very short-term, urgent basis. We had an ownership change, or a president changeover, management changeover about 8 years ago, and so the current Rick Schlesinger, who is now our COO, he at the time just needed somebody to step in for a short period, called Foley and asked for a favor. And they said, oh, we know this person who probably has a lot of time on our hands. Yeah. And so I went over to help. And I was supposed to be part of a group that was going to interview for the full-time position. As a new mom, I just wasn't quite ready to take that on. And as I realized we weren't really interviewing anybody, I went back and said to Rick, hey, what are we doing? And here I am 8 years later. So I actually worked as a full-time professor and in this capacity for about the first 2 years. People say to me, I don't get how the years add up. I was doing both for a while to just try to help the Brewers out while I was still teaching. And then I finally, after about 3 semesters, switched over to just sticking with my general counsel role.
So you have to deal with big important things like giant $100 million contracts, as well as kind of more routine stuff like the Quilters Club over here would like to use the Brewers logo, and can we please do this?
It's funny you say that. I actually, that truly, Kevin, that is what keeps it fun. I love the variety on a day-to-day basis. I love that when I walk through the door, I have no idea what I might encounter during the day. It keeps it exciting. I'm in constant motion, which is something, if you know me, that works very well for my personality. And frankly, it's all really important. I love I really do get calls from the wonderful, sweet clubs who want to say, I want to make this quilt to donate to my church. Can I use your logo? I like those folks a lot better than the folks that just decide to go use it. The reality is, as a professional baseball club, one of our trademarks are a very valuable commodity to us. It's one of the things that has real value, and so we protect it pretty stridently. So when it's something I deal with a lot, is this trademark kind of oversight piece, and so I love those ladies that call me and ask to use the marks. But yes, I transition after having done it for a while. It's a much smoother, more comfortable transition for me back and forth. But yeah, that's the name of the game, and the way. It makes the rhythm of it makes everything go. Certainly at different times a year, I can predict, generally speaking, what I'm going to be doing. But this year, for example, with the Braun deal, I couldn't have predicted 4 months ago that I'd be working on the Braun deal when I was. Usually that's my time to focus on a few other cleanup items. We just opened the ballpark, but that came in, and again, keeps it exciting.
Well, one of the things I find impressive about the Brewers is that, and maybe because it's a smaller market team, but I think it's more than that, there's an intimacy with the fans that doesn't exist there that with the Cubs or the Yankees or Boston, et cetera. And it's much more like, I think, the way it was 50 or 100 years ago, where they were really small businesses that, every day we got to put fannies in seats, but yet you go to the ballpark and, there might be 45, 50,000 other people there, and you feel like it's more of a neighborhood thing. Maybe that's a Wisconsin thing as much as it is anything else.
I think we do have to credit the fans, and I think we do have to credit Wisconsin for loving their teams, whether it's the Brewers or the Packers or the Badgers, whoever you want to take a look at. No doubt we have to attribute a lot to the fans. But I will tell you that is a very real focus from a PR perspective, from a marketing perspective, among all the wonderful folks I work with. We do want to focus on every fan feeling important and special when they come through the doors. And some of it might be the facility too. We've got this nice intimate facility setting, and that could be a little piece of it. But there's no doubt that is something that's important to us. It's something that's focused, that we really do focus on. And I think that it's something that the fans sense, and something that gives back. The more we see it give back, and the players notice it. I'll go back to what happened most recently, and for the folks that were either there or watching, when Ryan came out of the dugout the first time after he signed his long-term deal, those fans were unbelievable. I mean, how that makes a player feel, I don't care who you are, how important or how big a deal you have, that makes you feel important. And fans in this area are incredible at that. I've also seen our fans are very slow. You'll hear little criticisms, but they're very slow. You don't hear booing in those stands. You don't hear those kinds of things. And when you chat with the players, they notice those kinds of things. I mean, they don't want to talk about it too often, but there's no doubt it has an impact. So it is a focus from a business perspective, but I'm gonna give a lot of kudos to our fans as well.
I was in the ballpark a couple of days after that signing, and they were still cheering.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me that you have the nice new scoreboard there, and you realize for the money that you spent on the scoreboard, you could have signed Carlos Pena, which is what the Cubs did.
Yes. However, the scoreboard will be there for a long time, and the fans love that too.
Yeah, I was kidding. Do you remember when you first had that moment of, wow, how cool is this? I'm on the inside. This is awesome. Where you really felt like you were in a different world. Do you remember that moment?
One of the funniest moments I remember that happened very, very early on was my oldest son, who's now 8. So he was born, I had him as I was taking this job and splitting between the two. So my boys have all grown up sort of in the ballpark. And I think it was more, the first couple of years I was doing this, I was so focused on the business and figuring out the business, and there's so many facets to it. So I was very focused from that perspective, and had somewhat blind spots. My husband has always been joyously excited, and had a lot of energy about the club. But my son looked at me at one point, and he must have had it in his head that I played. He knew he could say Brewer. It was one of his first words, but he must have had it in his head that I played. And there was one night we were on the couch and we were watching the game, and he knew, because Bernie was, so he knew that we were home, and he looked at me and goes, "You're not a player." And I went, "No, know, but give me some props anyway, kiddo. Like, well, you still get to go to the ballpark. But that was a moment that to see so much of the ballpark and what I do through my kids' eyes, that's when it reminds you. It's exciting, and once you do allow yourself to step back, the ambience of a baseball field for me is unlike anything else. The quiet, when you go from the absolute quiet, our offices overlook the ballpark, and so when you go from that absolute quiet to then the rush within 45 minutes some days, it is really an incredible and overwhelming experience. And then the sort of, I don't want to call it the religion of baseball because you'll hear that a lot out there, but there really is something to that, something to sort of, it's something very different that true fans experience. And there's no doubt I sense it every day, but I love to be reminded of it when I've got kids or folks out to the ballpark for the first time, or and you're with them doing a tour, or they get to meet someone for the first time. That is what, unlike anything else, that is what for me is so rewarding about doing what I do. That's what makes it special.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the family. You have 4 children,
I do.
Right? Excuse me, and a husband who I'm sure thinks he's the
saint.
Luckiest guy in the world.
I don't know about that, but he is a saint.
But let's face it, you have a very high-powered job that has all kinds of demands on you that makes it tough to do, driving the soccer mobile on a regular basis and cutting up the oranges for the team, et cetera. How do you balance that?
It's a crazy thing, and I have to, truly, I have to thank and credit so many other people, quite frankly. I love, and I think it starts with, I have figured out through trial and error and experimenting in different ways that for me, work is a good fit. So working outside the home is a good fit. Being mom and wife is my first priority, but working outside the home is a good fit. And I think I have so many women ask me, how'd you make that decision? How'd you decide how'd you make it through when the babies were out there? Well, that's the part where I say, look, if it hadn't worked, I would have stayed home, but I have a boss. Rick is, and Bob Quinn, who I also report to, and Mark, frankly, the Antanazios, who are willing to say, I am in the office 3 days a week. So I work from home Monday and Friday, and I am actually physically in my office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And thank God for technology because it makes it a very doable thing. But to have folks that, oversee you who say, look, if you can, however you need to get it done, if you can get it done, we're going to let you do that. It's a very modern approach, I still believe, to having female employees in different capacities, and that has been phenomenal. And then there's my husband who, no doubt, Andy is a partner at Foley & Lardner as well, and so he's obviously a very busy guy too, but there's just this constant shuffle and game. We do have a nanny. People ask me all the time. We do. My youngest son is 2. I have 4 boys, so my youngest son is 2. So they're 8, 7, 5, and 2. So, there is just the constant shuffle of it, but it's really fun. And I think, again, Andy and I look at each other and we go back to this all the time. They're our first priority, and we just have a good time with them. And if you're loving what you're doing, I don't mean to make it sound all, Pollyanna, but it is, if you're having a good time with what you're doing, it happens. Are there days that it just literally go, okay, do I know where all the kids are? I don't entirely mean that seriously, but there are days like that, there's no doubt. But the upside of it all is really worth it at the end of the day. So it's not pretty. My husband has some line he uses about, you don't want to see the sausage being made. He's a South Side guy, so you don't want to see the sausage being made, but you
want to see him race.
Yeah, right. Well, there you have it. So, but it works at the end of the day.
Well, speaking of women in the sports world, this is a fairly new thing, maybe over the last 10 years, where you're not, the unicorn if you're a female in a front office. And I went and looked up a few things that you probably know this already, but women in Major League Baseball hold 18% of VP jobs, which is a higher number than I would have thought. About a third of the professional administrative jobs, so that's about 50 people across Major League Baseball. 28%, I'm sorry, the next 50 people, about 28% of senior administrative positions. 23 Major League Baseball teams have at least one female VP, and this was really surprising. The Giants, Red Sox, and Astros have 6 female VPs each. And while the NFL and NBA are roughly similar, I thought that was kind of curious. So do you guys, at the meetings, do you guys all kind of head off together and let the old boys do the old boys club thing?
Not at all. I get asked this question a lot, and I will tell you, maybe I was just naive to it when I started with the club, but I prefer to credit it to all the guys I work with, and there are a lot of them. But I never felt like I was looked at differently because I was female. Do I recognize now that in fact there are certain situations where I was definitely had it in my head that I needed to prove? I would close my lips if I didn't know exactly what I was talking about. You know, when it comes to rules or analyses or stats or whatever else. Early on, I was smart enough, I guess, to close my lips unless I knew the fact. You know, I'd go look at it and then I'd come back and give my 2 cents worth or whatever else. But you know, across Major League Baseball, no, there's not here's our little clique of women that are doing this. It's really not that way at all. And we do all get together very regularly. We have industry meetings every other year. We have general counsel meetings regularly. I will tell you, in the 8 years that I have, when I joined the club, I was the youngest VP and general counsel in across all of Major League Baseball. In addition to being the youngest, I was the only female at that point that was in truly a head role. That has shaken itself out tremendously over time. There's been some ebb and flow among the general counsels, and of course in other areas where VPs exist as well. It's been great, but no, I have not felt that way, Kevin. There's no doubt. It's out. There's in certain areas and in certain clubs, but the culture is not as old boys as some might think.
Well, I think there's been a change in baseball culture in the last 10 or 12 years. For a long time, the sabermetricians were sort of laboring in the provinces and writing papers basically along the lines of, boy, the baseball people are so dumb, why don't they listen to us? Well, calling people dumb is not a good way to have that happen. But I think with the success of the Red Sox and the book Moneyball and that sort of thing, that's the case. A couple of questions related to that. One, do the Brewers, are they on board with the whole Moneyball, sabermetric stuff? Are they more like the Cubs where they just blow it off, somewhere in the middle? I mean, in contract negotiations, for example, that, our guy should get this much because he does this stat, right? No, not so much.
I think that it's all, I don't want to say we totally blow it off. We have guys that work very, very hard. I think that Mark's and our investors' approach, together with Doug and the folks on the business side, and myself, I think we all bring a different piece of information to the table. And I think the process is more one of what's the available information, what's all out there. We don't hang our hat on any one. I don't believe that any club hangs their hat on only one piece of information. I also don't believe that any club completely blows it all off. So, I know the folks at all these different clubs and how they approach these kinds of things. I think it's a unique combination of it all. Nobody's going to tell you that they totally buy into the, or totally buy out of it one way or the other. But, we've got our statisticians and we've got those and that, you hang your hat on it when it's effective. And certainly those, I'm throwing those when I'm negotiating with agents. Certainly that information comes out. If they're going to bring it up, I'm going to respond with it. But is that all of it? No. And so we're prepared on a lot of different levels, I think, in that way. It does make it fun, and it is why in baseball we have so many different kinds of information and really smart people that bring something different to the table that all combines, hopefully, in putting a good deal out there. I think that happened in the Braun situation, where we used a lot of different angles and sort of bringing a good deal home.
The arbitration hearings must be the fun. For those who don't, why don't you explain arbitration for those who aren't as familiar?
Well, in a nutshell, I could literally we could do an entire show about that.
TVs
truly,
would click off all over Wisconsin.
They would. Although, actually, if you're right, it is fascinating from a certain angle. Sort of, kind of. But, when you're in a category of arbitration eligible, so there's a category of your players, generally on an annual basis, that are what we call arbitration eligible. In other words, we've got a number. If they have a number, we have a number. If they don't match, we can go to arbitration. It's a very formal process. The hearings are held in different locations, depending on the year. Florida area, we go to different places, and it's one of those. The reason that so many people think that arbitration is such a strange, odd process is that for most of the year, of course, your players you want on your side. Your players are your guys. You're building them up. This is all about bringing your team together. Well, for the moments that you're in arbitration, your sole mission, as sort of from the club's perspective, is to tell everybody everything about why that player is terrible and why he doesn't deserve the salary number he put on the table. And so it's a process that many many frown upon. It's a process that I think will see some changes. You'll hear theories about how it's just a game. So there's an arbitration panel that's comprised of a number of different individuals, and the theory goes that if there's a win in the morning for the player side, there's going to be a win in the afternoon for the club side. There's theories all over the place. What the science is to that, who knows? But it's a pretty intensive. Briefs are submitted on both sides, and there's a formal argument on both sides. If you go, many people know that the Brewers had not been to arbitration for years and years and years. We had gotten very close. I can't tell you the number of times I've been at the hotel, and we've been ready to move and haven't done it. And the Corey Hart situation, that's the one we went with Corey a few years ago, 2 years ago, I guess. And for a number of different reasons. There's strategic reasons. You look at who you've got coming down the pipe. You look at a number of different things when you decide whether a club needs to go. You can get to the point, one theory says, where no agent thinks you'll ever go, so they just play chicken till the end. So there's a number of different theories. Again, it's just a game. You could write volumes of books on all the different theories. But we went with Corey. We lost with Corey. We used a firm out of New York to argue Corey's case. So there's no rhyme or who knows exactly what happened. We ended up in a great place with Corey, I think, ultimately. And Corey, he's just back on the field right now, but certainly I think last year we got from Corey what we hoped to get from Corey. So it's a strange process, one that we haven't done. We settled out all of every one of our arbitration matters this season, some earlier, some later. Teddy Werner in our office, actually, it would not be humanly possible for me to do all of the arbitration, the brief writing work and the statistical gathering that goes into that. So Teddy Werner in my office actually came to us from Proskauer, which is the firm in New York that does a lot of Major League Baseball's arbitration matters, and he does a lot of that stats gathering for me now, just to get, or for us now to get ready for these particular hearings.
That's quite the process. I think that maybe most people think that, well, you just kind of amble into the conference table and one guy makes a case and the other guy makes the other case, and it's a lot more involved.
It is a lot more involved than that, and that's why I said I talked longer than I wanted to, but you could go on and on about it, and it's a controversial process, one that I think we'll hear more and more about.
You're watching Conversations from St. Norbert College. Joining us is St. Norbert College graduate and Vice President and General Counsel for the Milwaukee Brewers, Marti Wronski. Marty, I wanted to ask you about another initiative that you've been involved with, the Miracle League of Milwaukee. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I'd love to. Miracle League of Milwaukee, well, I'll talk about the Miracle League generally first. Miracle Leagues exist all over the country. There is a sort of a national organization and then smaller organizations all over. The Miracle League is a Little League program for children with disabilities from ages 4 to 19. And in the state of Wisconsin, there are 4 Miracle Leagues currently in existence. But there was not a Miracle League in the greater Milwaukee area, if you can believe that. So they existed. There's one in Green Bay. There's one in Appleton. They're in other La Crosse and then up in the Racine area. So they're located sort of north and south, but there wasn't one in our area. So some folks that I worked with and then just some good friends from the neighborhood took a look at this and said, hey, we found this thing. We don't have one of these. We've got to do something about this. And Casey McGee, who is one of our players and has become a good friend, has a son who has cerebral palsy. And we would look at Mac and, Daddy is a Major League Baseball player. And I asked his mom, Sarah, and whatever, where is he going to be able to play? What do you... So, it just depends. We don't know. And so that's what got this started. And we have ended up, the core group of the original Miracle League of Milwaukee group has ended up partnering with the YMCA of Greater Milwaukee. And we have a site located off Brown Deer Road for those folks who are from the Milwaukee area. And we broke ground just a short time ago. We're continuing to do all of our fundraising. But we hope by mid-July of this summer to have a soft opening just to get the kids out there on the field. We should be at least have enough of a facility that we can let the kids play. We hope to finish it so that it's really a formal facility. But we're going to do a grand opening for 2012.
That's cool. I was looking at the way that the games are played online, and every kid gets a chance. Every kid who hits the ball is considered safe, and the inning's not over until every kid gets a chance.
A lot of people really think it harkens back to sort of when you've got those younger levels in certain communities of baseball when you're first learning. And that's really what it is for these kids, because these kids generally have not had any chance to play baseball. So we've got every kids from who are wheelchair bound, we've got kids in walkers, we've got kids who have autism, you name it, any kind of disability that would keep a child outside of your normal, your mainstreamed Little League programs or your T-ball programs. Those kids we will take and we'll teach the best we can how to do this. We hired a formal full-time program director for this particular program. We actually just hired him this last week, and he is trained in his master's in adaptive programming, and will handle you bring it to us and we'll handle it and we'll make sure your child can play. So one of my favorite parts about this program, and one of the things when I looked at among the 4 families who really started this all, we have 15 able-bodied kids. No one has a child with a disability amongst us, and we looked at our kids and we looked at our friends who have kids that have disabilities or just general kids in the community and said, how in part can you bring these kids together? So the buddy program is a really, really important piece of this program, where you have an able-bodied adult, teenager, you name it, who is buddied with one of our participants at every single game. So in the outfield, a child always has someone else with them, or someone, if the child's up to bat, somebody to help them get around the bases and whatever else. But so the buddy program is such an important piece, and a lot of communities that have Miracle Leagues will tell you that the buddies in some instances get more out of it than the kids do. But the key to all this, people say, I don't get it. What about your facility is so different? And what it is that we have a rubberized surface, so including the outfield, that is seamless. So it's a completely rubberized surface with no seams in it whatsoever. So you don't have the issue with the kids moving over the uneven ground. We have all covered dugouts, so the kids with heat and temperaments are covered and shaded there. We have everything from specialized tees to specialized balls to weighted vests and everything else that are used depending on what the child's needs are, so that setting is comfortable for them.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's a fun thing.
It's a nationwide organization.
It is.
Well, that's wonderful.
I'm trying to help Milwaukee out.
We have a couple minutes. I want to ask you about your time here at St. Norbert College, if I could.
Sure.
So obviously you graduated, summa cum laude. So you must have been a very dedicated student. You ever get in any trouble?
Oh gosh, I wish I'd gotten into more. Actually, now is when I sound so lame. I can talk about my adult life and people are like, oh, you have a great job. But no, in all seriousness, I was the oldest of 4. I took college really seriously, maybe more seriously in some instances than I should have or needed to, but I did. And I was a full-time intern at a TV station here locally, and I also had another paying job on the weekends, and then I went to school full-time. And between those 3 things, I was just pretty focused on. At that point, I hadn't decided whether I was going to go into journalism or head off to graduate school. Decided that pretty late in the day. I figured out exactly what I wanted to end up doing. But some people say, "You're serious." I think I was scared. I was one of those students who was just I paid my way through school, and so I think that was part of it. And just kept my nose to the grindstone throughout. There was not much trouble to be had. I think I totaled a car or 2.
Or 2.
Yeah, but I was never a great driver. But I think that was about it. So, my time at St. Norbert was fantastic. My dad teases me. I was a transfer student, and my dad teases me from the minute I graduated. He wanted me to come here, and it was a little too close. I'm from Neenah, so I thought it was too close at the time. So I spent some time in London actually going to school before I came here. But from the minute I landed, it was a great thing, except I did end up with like 3 full semesters of religion classes because I had not taken any religion-focused classes when I was in London. So, it was a very serious couple of semesters, but it was a great time.
What advice would you give young people that are in college now? What is your wisdom? I mean, you're not so far removed from it that you can't relate to them. But,
yeah, and I think the biggest piece of advice I give students is be patient. I will confess, I talk to probably mostly law students, but everybody's like, okay, how do I get to what you are doing? And I think that right now, the key is to be patient. If I had this opportunity before I had practiced for more than 5 years at Foley, and before I had been in the academic world and done a lot of reading for a couple of years and just sort of stepped out of all that, when opportunities come too soon, you're not quite ready for them, and you can't, you don't necessarily have the confidence or the knowledge base that you need to really. I'm pretty much on my own out there in terms of decision making every day, and so I always say be patient. Take every experience you have very seriously, because I have, even in retrospect, every experience I had, whether it was an internship that I really didn't want or a crummy summer job or whatever else, you really do take from all of those experiences something that ends up proving to be very important long-term to wherever it is you end up.
And that's a great way to wrap it up. I hope you've enjoyed our show. Until next time, I'm Kevin Quinn. Best wishes for good conversations from St. Norbert College.